In this video, I'm talking about Chicago. I'm going to tell you why, despite the fact there are 4 or 5 things I really don't like about this city, it still is one of my favorite places to visit anywhere in the world. If you're planning to visit this place soon, I've got a number of important tips that you should know before you go. Let me start out and tell you something you should absolutely know about Chicago if you don't already, and that is Chicago is all about the skyscrapers. This is the birthplace and the epicenter of skyscrapers to this day. Now, it's true there may be cities with more skyscrapers and taller skyscrapers, but few have the history and the skyline of Chicago. This town is extraordinarily important and has been ever since they built the first skyscraper in the 1880s. To this day, one of the most important architectural firms in the world, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, who have designed skyscrapers all over the world, including the Burj Khalifa, are based here in Chicago. And the city itself is always developing and coming up with new skyscrapers, pushing modern designs. Whether you love the new contemporary style skyscrapers, some of the older Art Deco buildings, some of the historical buildings like the Chicago Tribune building or the Wrigley building, there's something for everybody in Chicago, and it's a fascinating place. You'll be awestruck by the skyscrapers in this town. So where do you go to see these skyscrapers? There's so many great vantage points, whether in Grant Park or on the northern end of the downtown area on Michigan Avenue. That's near the John Hancock building and the water tower. But really, if it's your first time in Chicago, you've got to go on an architectural tour. The architectural tours are about 90 minutes long. They're going to take you up and down both branches of the Chicago River. The tours are very educational. Each of these buildings has a unique story or a unique architect who designed it. And you're going to learn a lot and have a good time going on these tours. And by the way, you're going to have a live guide as well, and sometimes they mix a little bit of humor into it. I will tell you that I recommend going on the tour sponsored by the Chicago Architecture Center. It's a smaller vessel, and usually, even though it's a little bit more expensive, $5 or $10 more per ticket, the boat is not nearly as crowded, so just keep that in mind. But either way, I highly recommend, especially if it's your first time in Chicago, make sure you go on an architectural boat tour. Let me jump to something that I don't love about Chicago, and that is the unpredictability of the weather. Yes, everybody knows if you come in the winter, you're going to freeze. And if you come during July and August, it's extremely hot here in Chicago. But if you come during the spring and fall, you're generally going to find decent weather. But it's just unpredictable. And I mean that like an hour-to-hour basis. You don't know if it's going to be windy, if it's going to be rainy. Chicago's the kind of place, because of that lake effect, where you look on your app and you might see that, 0 precipitation today. And then 2 hours later, you're getting rained on or a windstorm kicks up. You just don't know with Chicago. It's very unpredictable as far as the weather goes. One thing Chicago has done really well with in recent years is they've developed the Riverwalk. Now, it's interesting because they started doing this back in the late 90s. Apparently, the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Daley, went down to San Antonio, saw their Riverwalk, and got inspired and said, hey, we've got a better river than San Antonio. Why can't we do our own variation? I visited Chicago a number of times back in the 2000s, but over the last decade, I haven't been here too often. And yet on this last visit, I come again and I see how far they've taken the Riverwalk, the entire south bank of the main channel of the Chicago River. Now you can walk along, there's shops, restaurants, there's exhibits, there's a Vietnam memorial. This wasn't here 20 years ago, and really impressive what they've done. And I definitely recommend walking the Riverwalk both day and night. There's a good vibe there, lots of things to do and see along that Riverwalk. Let's talk food. You really can't talk about Chicago without talking about the delicious cuisine in this town. This is one of the best foodie cities anywhere in the world, if you ask me. First up, deep dish pizza. There are a lot of different restaurants where you can find delicious deep dish pizza in this town. I recommend Lou Malnati's. This place is a local chain. There's something like 50 or 60 restaurants in the greater Chicago area, and it serves up some hot and delicious deep dish pizza. And you can order a personal size, or you can get a much bigger one if you're sharing with multiple people. My wife also wanted me to say they do have a delicious salad here as well. So definitely check out Lou Malnati's. Along with deep dish pizza, you must also try a Chicago dog, which is just a normal hot dog, but it includes onions, peppers, tomatoes, and pickles, and also mustard, but never ketchup. Now you can find Chicago dogs almost anywhere in the city. Highly recommended. If you're looking for something different and you want to get out of the downtown area, head to the Fulton Market District, which is located just west of downtown. This area has a cool vibe to it. There's a lot of trendy restaurants. There's a unique Chinese restaurant called Duck Duck Goat that I highly recommend. Went there with my wife. It's kind of a unique Asian fusion. We had some delicious food there. There's also a place called Time Out Market, which is one of these trendy cafeteria-style eateries where there's about a dozen different restaurants that are tied into it. Now, moving away from the Fulton Market, if it's morning time, you'll want to check out Stan's Donuts. There's a few of these around town. Stan's is known for their Cruffin. You've got to check out Stan's Cruffin. It's a unique concoction. Finally, check out Jenni's Splendid Ice Creams. We noticed this place because there was a line out the door, and anytime there's a line, that usually means there's something good. Turns out there's a few Jenni's locations. The one we went to, only about a block away from the John Hancock building. If you go, you've got to try their brown buttered ice cream. I think there's a flavor called brown buttered almond brittle, and it is to die for. Definitely check it out. We've been raving about it ever since we went. Let me tell you something I don't like about Chicago, and there's nothing I can really do about it, but you should be aware Chicago is an extremely expensive city. You come here on vacation, and it kind of feels like you're getting nickel and dimed. Now, hotel costs are high, parking is high, you want to take an Uber ride, seems more expensive than normal. And the tax rate here, the sales tax rate, is over 10%. And that impacts everything. You go shopping, you're going to get hit with a 10% sales tax. Dining out, you go to a place, you order a couple deep dish pizzas and a couple drinks, you're going to be over $50. And a lot of restaurants have gratuity included. That's 18% gratuity included. And on top of that, a lot of restaurants are now charging a surcharge to help cover additional costs. Altogether, it just feels like between the taxes, the surcharges, you're getting nickel and dimed in what is already an expensive city. So be aware of that. Think it's coming? Let me tell you one more thing that I don't care for about Chicago, and that is it's a loud city. And by loud, I mean noisy, whether it be emergency vehicles or Harley Davidsons or the L train. The loud noises in this city bounce off of the concrete, off of the large buildings, and it can be kind of noisy and just irritating at times. Even if you're in your hotel room and your window is facing a main street, you're going to hear noises and ambulances and Harley Davidsons, and they are going to wake you up at night. It's a loud town. Yeah, I know, maybe I'm just getting old. Now, something that Chicago is often critiqued for is O'Hare International Airport. And I think it's a mixed bag. There's some good things about O'Hare and some bad things. First, the bad, it's congested, it's busy, there's always a traffic jam coming to and from. But on the other hand, it's a big airport. There's a lot of different dining options, and you can get a flight to pretty much anywhere in the world direct. Also, they're putting $8 billion into revamping the airport, so it really could be one of the most modern, state-of-the-art airports by the end of the decade. And one thing you've got to check out when you're in Chicago is the Second City. This is a world-renowned improv comedy club. It's located in the Old Town area, which is just north of downtown, and you've really got to visit this place. There are a variety of different shows that you can check out. And remember, Second City gave rise to comics such as Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Tina Fey, Steve Carell. There are so many alumni, And I'll tell you what, you come here and the shows that they put on every single night are phenomenal. And if you come during the weekend, you can get an afternoon show if you don't want to stay out late. So definitely check out Second City when you're in Chicago.
You don't need a passport to travel to Hawaii.
Before this video is through, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about Chicago's legendary parks. You've got Grant Park, which is the front lawn of Chicago with the beautiful backdrop of the skyline. And you've got Buckingham Fountain right there. There's so much space. You can find yourself alone in this park. It's huge. Now, up in the northwest corner of Grant Park, you have Millennium Park, which is where the Cloud Gate is. That's the famous bean with the reflective coating. Definitely worth checking out if it's not under construction. A lot of times they're working on that plaza. And then you've got Lincoln Park, which is on the northern end of town. Again, a huge park right along Lake Michigan. These parks are just so well done, and they add so much character and beauty to the city of Chicago. So as I wrap this up, yes, Chicago has its flaws. It's expensive, it's loud, the weather is unpredictable. And beyond that, you hear on the news about a lot of violent crime here in Chicago. And it's true, there are some very violent neighborhoods that you'll never go to. They're not in the downtown or tourist areas. They're a little ways out. Nevertheless, despite all these flaws, why would you come to Chicago? I'll just say that it is an impressive city. It really is. You walk around, you experience the architecture, you see the skyscrapers, you see the parks, you taste the food. And I haven't even scratched the surface and talked about the Art Institute of Chicago and the aquarium and some of the other things you can do in this town. But even with all these flaws, Chicago is still one of my favorite cities. And if you come here and walk around and you're not impressed with this place, probably you need to get out more.